Hello, and welcome to this pre-recorded event for GCE Design and Technology Food, the AS exam paper. To help you get the most out of this feedback, you may want to have the following documents handy, as we will refer to them during the session. The 2015 exam paper and mark scheme, the specification, the examiner's report. The aims and objective of this event are to provide feedback on the national performance of candidates in Unit 2 of the June 2015 series. Consider the variation of candidates' performance on different questions and examine possible reasons why. Apply the mark scheme to a range of questions. Identify common issues by looking at the exam paper alongside the examiner's report. We start by looking at 3 responses to question 1D, which is: describe 2 characteristics of amylose that influence its ability to form a gel. This question had 4 marks available. The command word describe requires candidates to identify 2 points, which are then described or expanded with additional relevant information. This response showed extensive accurate knowledge and gained full marks. 2 marks were awarded for stating that amylose is a linear structure, 1 mark, and which has good setting ability, 1 mark. The 2 further marks were given for stating that amylose is susceptible to retrogradation and that this would lead to syneresis. This is a concise response which includes accurate descriptions. It is clear the question has been fully understood and the answer shows a high-level knowledge. The characteristics of amylose are made clear, and this is followed by an explanation that links those characteristics with its gelling ability. This response has also gained full marks and contains evidence of relevant technical vocabulary. This candidate did less well here, gaining just 2 marks for their response. 1 mark was given for stating that amylose has 300 glucose units, and 1 mark for explaining that this allows it to easily form a gel. The candidate has then given information which does not answer the question and is quite confusing. The remainder of this response lacks technical knowledge. Statements such as "some will go away" are too vague at AS level. Let's summarize the overall performance for this question. Most candidates performed well, demonstrating detailed understanding of the characteristics of amylose and its structure. The consequent effect on gel formation were frequently described using relevant technical vocabulary. Many of those who did not perform well described the process of gelatinization rather than the characteristics of amylose. In other words, they gave accurate information but did not answer the question given. Now we are going to look at question 5b, a comparison of the effects of pasteurization and sterilization on food. This answer is excellent, and there is evidence of the response being planned before it was written. Each sentence examines one effect, referring each time to both preservation methods. The response includes accurate and detailed information, the naming of vitamins, for example. Full marks were given for this answer. The command word here is compare. This response is structured well. For example, the effect on flavour is discussed in the first sentence, with clear comparisons being made between pasteurization and sterilization. Marks were given for the discussion of flavour, colour, and microbial growth, but the candidate has also covered the effects on nutritive value. This response begins with a description of both pasteurization and sterilization. Many candidates gave details of the 2 processes, that is, the times and temperatures for pasteurization and sterilization. This was not relevant to the question and gained them no marks. The question asks for the effects of these processes. This candidate gained 4 marks for stating that sterilisation altered colour and flavour as well as extending shelf life. The final mark was awarded for stating that pasteurised products would have a shorter shelf life. It should be noted that in a comparison question, candidates must discuss both processes to gain full marks. 4 effects of one process is not a comparison. This is another example of a response which provides descriptions of each process rather than comparing their effects on food. The candidate also gives examples of their uses. Again, information that is not relevant to the question. 2 marks were given for the accurate comparison of shelf life. This question was answered well, and many students gained 4 marks or more, with a maximum of 6 marks. The majority of candidates explained the effect on shelf life, colour and flavour, and some gave accurate descriptions of the effect on nutritive value. High ability students were able to accurately explain the effect each process had on microorganisms. Weak responses could be improved by focusing on the effects of the processes, not describing them. Slide 12 contains a marking activity. Read the response to question 3C and use your copy of the mark scheme to decide how many marks you would award. You may wish to pause the video whilst you carry out this activity. On the next slide, you will be able to view this response with an explanation of where marks were awarded. There are a maximum of 6 marks for this question. Examiners always carry out positive marking. 4 marks were given for stating that essential fatty acids cannot be made in the body, can be obtained from fish, and are important for brain development and the formation of cell membranes. As can be seen in this response, many candidates inaccurately stated that EFAs would assist the clotting of blood, and that they are the building blocks of hormones. The working properties of essential fatty acids in the diet can be found in section 2.3 of the specification, under fats. Question 3C was a fairly long response question designed to give candidates an opportunity to demonstrate comprehensive knowledge of the topic. It was clear this topic has been well taught, and many students were able to give accurate descriptions of the nature of essential fatty acids using relevant technical vocabulary. A large number were able to identify a number of functions of EFAs. Looking now at why some students did not perform well in this question. The main error was to confuse essential fatty acids with essential amino acids. Where this occurred, only 1 mark was usually achieved, because it is true that neither essential fatty acids or essential amino acids can be made in the body. Others gave inaccurate information, particularly in relation to the effect of EFAs on cholesterol and blood clotting. Few candidates discussed links between omega-3 and heart attacks, or that a deficiency of EFAs is implicated in skin disorders. Health advice does change, and teachers may find it useful to update their knowledge on reliable websites. We are now going to look at some questions where students performed less well and consider the reasons for this. Question 2B asks candidates to evaluate the use of natural flavours in food products. There are 4 marks available in this question. The command word, evaluate, requires consideration of the advantages and disadvantages. This response has achieved 2 marks for describing consumer preference for natural flavours and stating that they are expensive. Whilst a variation in flavour would be acceptable, no marks can be given for stating that natural flavours might be weaker. The initial sentence simply gives a reason for the use of flavours in food products. As in the previous response, the student's first sentence doesn't answer the question. It is not an advantage or disadvantage of natural flavours. This candidate gained only 1 mark for consumer preference. Adding value is too vague, and there is no guarantee that natural flavours are produced organically. Here we can see a balanced argument which outlines both advantages and disadvantages of natural flavours. Full marks were gained for seasonal availability, cost, variation and consumer preference. It was pleasing to see some students refer to sustainability in this question. To summarise, whilst no examples of poorer performing candidates have been included in this presentation, a significant number of students did not perform well in this question because they either talked about the reasons why flavours are used by manufacturers or they became confused and wrote about the use of colours. It would be helpful to make students aware that the command word evaluate requires a balanced argument with both advantages and disadvantages needed to achieve maximum marks. Question 6a asks candidates to describe two critical control points, CCP, that could be applied to the production of chilled ready meals. 1 mark is given for identifying each CCP and a further mark for the description. In this response, a mark is given for stating that date marks should be adhered to, and a second for explaining that this is to avoid bacterial growth. Reference to same storage conditions is too vague, but has not prevented the student from achieving 2 marks for the accurate information found here. The second statement gained no marks. Critical control points relate to preventing microbial growth or harm to the consumer, and manufacturers would not rely on visual checks. The first point here explains well the importance of personal hygiene, with an example of how this should be implemented. A second mark is given for the reason, to prevent cross-contamination. The second point is both vague and inaccurate. The time allowed between cooking and cooling is 90 minutes, not 2 hours. This response does not consider the context of chilled ready meal production. It sounds more like guidance for preparation in the home. This response is well written and has gained maximum marks. Each point is explained clearly and concisely, with the reason given for the CCP. Accurate temperatures have been given for storing ready meals. To summarise, some candidates were unable to make the distinction between a critical control point and a control point. Safety of the consumer is key when identifying a CCP, whereas the quality of the product would be the purpose of most controls. At AS level, it is expected that students would be able to give accurate times and temperatures for storage, chilling, cooking, etc. Our second activity is to once again mark a student's response. We are looking at a long response question near the end of the paper with 8 marks available. Read the answer to question 6b on this slide and use your copy of the mark scheme to decide how many marks you would award. You may wish to pause the video whilst you carry out this activity. On the next slide, you will be able to view this response with an explanation of where marks were awarded. This response achieved 6 marks, and we will start by looking at where these were achieved. At the beginning, the student explains that slow freezing results in the formation of large ice crystals which will rupture cells. This gains 2 marks. They go on to state that the loss of structure will spoil the texture, which gains a 3rd mark. Further on, 2 marks are given for stating that quick freezing results in small ice crystals, which looks more appealing, that is, retains quality. A final mark is given for stating that water is expelled from the product when frozen slowly. This is quite a muddled response that would have benefited from being planned. Reference to changes in nutritional value and flavour are not correct, as these aspects would not be affected by the rate of freezing. Many candidates performed well and gained 6 or more marks in question 6b. They demonstrated a good understanding of the effect of the rate of freezing on the structure of food, As well as demonstrating how slow freezing damages foods, high-ability students explained the positive effect of quick freezing food products. A number of students misinterpreted the question and wrote about the different methods of freezing. Some believed some methods to be quick and others slow, but could not describe the effect on the structure of food products. Others took a scattergun approach and mentioned every possible aspect of food that might be affected: taste, texture, appearance, nutritional content, and shelf life. At this stage in the paper, students would be expected to develop their facts with examples, descriptions, and/or explanations. It is now time to summarise this year's exam paper and student performance. The examiner's report acknowledges that teaching of the current specification continues to be of a high standard in centres. This is key to enabling students to be very successful in this unit. It is clear that teachers are delivering the breadth and depth of knowledge required to be successful in the written examination. We conclude with a few comments made whilst marking the paper that you may wish to consider. Whilst there is a place for using previous exam questions, it is vital students can adapt their responses to the question that is being asked. Encourage students to spend time reading the question to ensure they understand what is required. The use of a glossary or glossary tests may improve students' understanding of technical vocabulary. Vague responses which lack the detailed knowledge required at AS level lost marks.